We're starting some Kuf Halacha Yid. Chavis like this: Yisrael Shanos and Kesef Uman of Kechavim. A Yid took his silver and he gave it to an Uman who was not Jewish. Last is a kli. That the guy should make him a kli. Einoi tzarich tefillah. That kli doesn't need tefillah. Which is to say, I took a piece of silver. Excuse me. I handed it to the guy. I said, "Make me a kli." So then when he finishes, he gives it back to me. Okay, so I paid him for making the kli for me. So that kli doesn't need tefillah because it's my silver, it's my kli. The fact that he did the work doesn't make a difference. V'yesh chok, and the Rama says there are those who argue. So this Machaber Rama, excuse me, we're going to talk about second. But what they're arguing about with the shayla is whether you have to fix it or not, whether you have to type it or not. V'yesh tevel bracha. So the Rama says to be machmir to tevel that bracha, and now the Rama says v'mixes hakesef shnas menu hakli shel ev kechavim tzarich tefillah. If the guy contributed metal towards making it, which is to say, I gave him some silver, and he took some of his own silver, and then he made that silver and my silver together into a kli, then you have to tevel it. And the other reason is simpler, because over there, the kli is partially with the yid's silver, partially the guy's silver. So since it's partially his silver, so now it's a kli that was owned by him, and now when I buy it from him, when I pay and therefore take the whole kli for myself, now that kli is a kli that was a guy's, and now it's a yid, so now I have to tevel it. Okay, so the second part of it, which we're going to talk out of order, we're going to do that part first. The second part of the Rama is a more straightforward.
So clearly, so you don't go if you buy his chaylik, you have to.
Right, that's going to come in a later than even more prepared. Yes, correct. If it's a shutfus of a yid and a guy, and then the yid takes on the full ownership, the yid is chayv and tefillah. Okay.
Then a while ago, a little piece is pater.
Yes, well, that's going to be a later thing. It's going to be a later thing.
Is this a case of shutfus?
It was temporarily a shutfus. You gave him some silver. Right. Some of the silver was his. So when he made the kli, it was now a kli that was partially. You are taking. No, now you took it back from him. Now the yid paid him the dollar for the work, and now the kli is completely his. So it went from being belonging to both of them, so to speak, to now belonging just to the yid, to now it's having two.
If he would leave some of it by the guy.
If the guy would retain ownership, then it would be.
I'm not going to pay everything except for $1.
Well, if there would be a shutfus, that's going to be a later than about a shutfus. Guys, we're off topic. We're way off topic. It's coming. It's not making me grow. Okay, now, what we're going to pull out of this, is a case. It's not on the screen. It's a case. We're going to do this first. It's a case, something called retinning. Okay, retinning. Okay, which means we went together to it. Retinning means is in a bakery. In a bakery, they have a zillion sheet pans. And with time, those sheet pans get beat up and worn down, and they don't look so put together. And they send them out. They send them to a company who redoes them. What the company does first, they clean them. They do a real job of cleaning them, and then they put on a new layer of tin on top of the kli.
Well, what is the kli?
It's a tin. It's a tin pan.
The whole thing's tin through and through.
But it's some kind of it's a metal. It's a sheet pan.
But it was coated with tin, and the tin
it's not coated. It in itself is wearing down. It's not coated with anything. Sometimes they put a new coating on it.
It was originally
something they're coated on those. Yeah.
It was originally coated with tin. The coating wore off. Now it's re-coating.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so
they just clean it.
Right, they do clean also. Correct. Now, so there's a shayla in the place. That's I'm going to tell you this machlokes in the place about whether you have to tevel that, whether you have to tevel it again. What I mean is that when Norshore Bakery bought the pan, they teveled it. Okay, and now it went to the guy, and the guy put on a new layer, and now there's a question that has to be teveled again, now that it went out for this new layer. Okay, and
they might just clean it.
Sometimes they just clean it.
And you don't need to. There's no chance.
Do you know what got what?
Yeah, you pay for it. You pay for the service.
Your choice.
Yeah, you're paying for the service. Depending what you ask for, that's what you do with it. Okay, so now.
Glading is not chayim and tefillah.
Let me talk. So there's a machlokes. The Mizrahi says like this. Now, the Mizrahi and Kamat, everybody who's talking about this, are talking about the shayla that we went to the place for to see it, which is what? Yeah. No, it's chuvas. His chuvas. He says he talks about it. He talks as do most of the people talk about it.
whether it has to be kashered, which is to say, if you have a treif sheet pan and you send it out to get this tinning done to it, does that qualify, or after that process is done, do you still have to kasher? Okay, that's what most of these places we're talking about at that child. Okay, that's not what we're talking about.
How is it clean? With water?
That's what the shadow was, and we probably talked about only Hagos Keilim. There's lots of steps to the cleaning them, and they're talking about whether you have to kasher it, whether you have to kasher it. It was treif, you did this process with now you have to kasher it afterwards. Okay, so the Mizrahi says, he has three reasons why you don't have to kasher it afterwards. Okay, and his second one is, I believe it's the second one, is that when you have the original sheet pan, and now you put on this new coating of tin on the top of it, you put this new coating on top of it, so it's as if you have two Keilim. You have an original Kli, and now you have a new Kli on top of the original Kli. So even if the inner Kli is treif, but blias can't get from the inner Kli out to the food. Okay, because there's a new Kli. Okay, so we're not here from his. He argues. He says no. It's two Keilim. It's a Kli with another Kli on top of it, and therefore
It's not like the iron.
Use it for what? Wait, the one in Mizrach is thinking.
It's actually correct. Okay, so he says, and then he goes a step further. Okay, we're not talking about Hagos Keilim angle, but he said, and therefore, when the Yid gets his Kli back. When the Yid gets the Kli back, he has to title it again. Because just like it's two Keilim who are in that the bleed doesn't go through from the inside, from the original Kli into the food, so too there's a new layer. So too there's a new layer over here, and that new layer is a new Kli, and it was never titled. So when you send out the Kli for this process, you have to then title it again. So that's what the Mizrahi says. Okay? And the Pri Chodesh says, no. He says that new layer is not Chayiv Tevillas Keilim, because it's only the Lenoi, okay, which is to say he compares it to din that the Ramah says beforehand that if a person has a wooden pitcher and on the spout has metal on it, so the Ramah says if the spout is metal, hagam that touches the water that pours out of the pitcher, he says you're not Chayiv Tevillas Keilim because the spout is just decorative. Okay, you don't need it to be functional, and therefore, since it's just decorative, so therefore it's not Chayiv Tevillas Keilim. So the Pri Chodesh says the same thing over here also. The pitcher, the sheet pan was fully functional. The fact that you put on a new layer is just linoy, just makes it look nice, and therefore he says it's not Chayiv Tevillas Keilim. It's not considered. It's not. It is metal that's touching the food, but it's not something that is Chayiv Tevillas Keilim.
Sent it because it wasn't functional.
No,
it improve its functionality.
Okay, so he's learning that maybe the cleaning of it is to make it more functional, but putting on a new layer is just to make it nice and pretty. That's what he says. That's what he says. That's what it is. And it may very much depend on the material. So okay, so the Pri Chodesh says no, it's only Lenoy, since it's Lenoy, it doesn't have to feel. Okay, so now there are some Achronim, if I just say more prominent among them, who accept the Pri Chodesh and say it's not having Tevillas Keilim. Okay. The Mishabura and many others say that you should do tefillah. They say do tefillah without a bracha. And there's two different ways that they say that din that you do tefillah without a bracha. Some say it's a machlekes haposkim. The Mizrahi says this way, and the Pri Chodesh says this way. So you should do tefillah without a bracha. Okay, that's how some understand it. And there's another way to understand it, which I think is the Magen Avraham. It's actually brought. The Magen Avraham is brought in the Kivegger back on. The very first din, okay, it's the second. It's a little bit Kveger. He says, "Keilim shehutpalu ba'achakach tzipam ba'avar tzrichin tefillah sheines." Okay, you put on a new layer. You need tefillah. I Magen Avraham. Okay, and if you look in the Magen Avraham, it says here it's in Chav Vav. It's in Chav Zayin. If you look in the Magen Avraham, says like this. The Magen Avraham is talking about the kashrus part of it. As I said, he's talking about Tafnun Aleph, Sivkot Chav Zayin. So I said, it says Chavav, but it's really Chav Zayin.
Mine says Chav Zayin.
Okay, so you have the fancy one. Mine says Chavav. So anyhow, so the Magen Avraham is talking about the kashering of it, and after he says that, he says the Mizrahi says you're not mechuyev to kasher it because it's like a new layer. He brings this Mizrahi and says you're not mechuyev to kasher it. He says in Tevillas Keilim, ayin siman kuf chav. Okay, what's that? I mean, what is it? He's trying to remind you with how Tevillas Keilim. Like, what does he tell you? And the Mizrahi himself tells you. The Mizrahi, it's not like he doesn't say it. The Mizrahi says, and if you want to know about Tevillas Keilim, this is what you think. You don't have to title it. Okay. So what I think what he's trying to say is like this. Maybe it's conjecture. This is what I think he's trying to say. This is what David had mentioned before. Let's say that the Mizrahi is correct. let's say that's correct, that it's considered a new kli. This is this new layer on top of an old kli, and therefore a new kli needs to be toivel again. Okay. Well, in the beginning of Kuf Chaf, in the first halacha is a machlokes mechaber and Rama. What happens if you have a kli that's not chayiv in tefillah, and you put on top of it another layer that is chayiv in tefillah? Okay. What's the din if you, which is what the Retinning is going on? If you take a kli that's not chayiv and you put on top of it a kli that is chayiv. In the case of the Shulchan Aruch was you took cheres and you put on top of it metal. Okay. But in our case, it's the same thing. You took a base which is not chayiv in tefillas kelim, because you already had tefillas kelim. It's not chayiv in tefillas kelim, and you put a layer on top of it that is chayiv in tefillas kelim. So what's the din? So the Mechaber says you have to toivel it again. It's almost like a fair Gemara. You have to toivel it. Okay. So when the Mizrahi says you have to toivel it, it's because that's the simple understanding that you have to toivel it. But the Ramah there says you should not toivel it. Okay, you toivel that a bracha. So when the Magen Avraham says, with the Mizrahi, if you want to know what the din is, you have to toivel it, you have to go look in Sim Kuf Chaf, because you're going to find out that even if the Mizrahi is correct, that it's chayiv in tefillah, even if he's correct in the theory of it, that it's chayiv in tefillah, but in Lamaisa, we, possibly like the Ramah, will say that's only tefillah without a bracha. Okay, so we're not saying do tefillah without a bracha because we're mesupik, if we say like the Mizrahi would be chodesh, it's tefillah without a bracha because it's a kli that's not chayiv in tefillah, coated with a kli that is chayiv in tefillah. Well, in that case, the Ramah said to only do tefillah without a bracha. Okay, if you remember, one of our hezberim in that Ramah, who's going not like a Befer Shigabar, is that
and Mishbur doesn't say that.
Mishbur says toivel without a bracha. The Achronim say toivel without a bracha. He doesn't explain why you should toivel without a bracha. What's going on behind the scenes?
So this is what it means then, right?
Well, some say that's because the machlokes came, so toivel without a bracha. That's what some say. I'm explaining to you how I think what the Magen Avraham is hinting at, and why the Krieger brings it over there. I don't know if that's a deal. That he needs to say it's toivel without a bracha because at most it's just a kli that's coated. A coated kli, if the top coat, the coating needs to and the bottom doesn't, then toivel without a bracha. That's what we do anyhow. So we could follow like the Mizrahi and take toivel without a bracha because of that.
So if you're right, then
Svardim would say that, yeah. Well, now Svardim, Rebbe Vadi says not toivel. Okay, so modern Svardim would follow Rebbe Vadi. Rebbe Vadi says like to be chodesh, he's right. It's Lenoy. You know, so he has lots to say about it. But that's he says like that. But if from Mizrahi's perspective, it would be right to say you should toivel with a bracha because, of course, he holds like the Mechaber. It's the famous Gemara. Okay, but the Ramah who says you should toivel without a bracha, that would be that's what's behind it. Okay, there's others that the Prim Gadol also says you should toivel without a bracha. The Krieger here brings it toivel without a bracha. Okay, on to our next thing. Okay.
Is that true that our retaining people do today in Illinois? Bakeries do in Illinois?
Yeah.
Really?
What do you think they do?
No.
There's two parts of the process.
Lanai in the back, they're not doing lanai.
What they cleaning it is because you got to clean it. Okay, why do they put a new layer on top of it?
It makes it much smoother. It makes the product comes out.
That's hard for me to believe just for look. The back of the thing is spending money.
Well, consumers don't see it.
Just to make that nice things look nicer.
So,
back of these things, if it works, it's good.
So if you without getting back into that shiloh, why the Ramah says, not like the Gemara. The Gemara says that the Koneh type you do have to toivel, and the Ramah says toivel at bracha. At the time we have talked about, it's not always so clear what's functional and what's lenoy. And so because of the question that case by case it may be functional, maybe lenoy, that's why you do toivel at bracha. Maybe okay. Or you're arguing that like the Mizrahi that it's mechuyev in tefillah. It's mechuyev in tefillah minadin.
It's metzius.
Okay, so that's fine.
Yes, it's bakeries are.
It's not. At most, it can be chayiv tefillah, but it'll be without a bracha anyhow because of other things. Okay, so we assume. I don't know if we assume. We're mazaras, the people take care of those places, that they have to toivel them. They send out the sheep pants for retinning. When they come back, they got to be toiveled again. You should think that. You should think it's you toivel when you buy it. Okay, here you have to toivel it when they send it out. And okay.
Oh, we consider they got switched and Kashrus goes
that's the bakery's own issue to make sure when they send out pants, they get the same pants back. Yeah? Yes, of course. Okay, now to on to other topic. I hope we have time for it, which is like this: the Mechaber and the Ramah. The Mechaber said you gave the silver to the guy.
Like a napkin plate or something that they get finished.
Okay.
That's just the norm, right?
What is it made out of?
They're these shiny reflective things that I asked you once about this.
I don't remember.
And there are these shiny reflective dishes, and if you put them in the dishwasher, all the reflective part on top gets
washed away.
Yeah. So you send it back to the company and it gets
Refinished.
refinished. Does that mean Tevillas coming in?
I don't remember. So you have to go. It depends on details. I don't. Okay. So now on to our Mechaber and the Ramah. The Mechaber said a Yid gave the silver to the guy, and the guy made the kli. It's not having Tevillas Keilim. And then the guy, of course, gave it back to him. Not having Tevillas Keilim. And the Ramah said Yesh Chalkan, so you should tell that bracha. Okay. What's going on here? What's the question here? The question is the reason why you should potentially need Tevillas Keilim is because of a concept called Uman Koneh b'shvach kli, some big words over there. Uman Koneh b'shvach kli, which means to say is that when an Uman does work and he takes some raw material, some raw materials, and he makes it into something else, then he has a kinyan in that, at least in what he improved. Let's say in what he improved, and it's so partially his. So now the guy took my silver, took my glob of silver, and turned it into a kiddush cup. So that kiddush cup now is chayv Tevillas Keilim because it was partially the guy's. The guy owned part of the kiddush cup. Now when he gives it back to me, now I've taken it from the guy and I'm chayv Tevillas Keilim. Okay, that's what the Ramah would say potentially. And the Mechaber says, no, we do not say Uman Koneh b'shvach kli. It's not the truth. We don't say Uman Koneh b'shvach kli, and therefore it's completely the Yid's. The Yid took the silver. The guy did something with it, but basically it was the Yid's from beginning to end. It's not chayv Tevillas Keilim. Okay, now without getting into the details. Even if you hold like the Ramah that Uman Koneh b'shvach kli, even were we to say that, which of course you see it's a machlokes here, if Uman Koneh b'shvach kli, there are a lot of other details that have to work here. Excuse me, in order to make you chayv Tevillas Keilim, which is to say, is when we say that the guy has a kinyan of Uman Koneh b'shvach kli, some argue this. There's a long taz here. Some argue that owning it as an Uman Koneh b'shvach kli is not enough to make you chayv Tevillas Keilim. It's not like Klei Midyon. It's not Shmoyelov. Others say, well, maybe it depends what he owned. Maybe his ownership is only on a part that's so minimal that does make you chayv Tevillas Keilim. Maybe it depends on whether what's it called, lots of details. Okay, but for our purposes, the Ramah Shita doesn't start unless you say Uman Koneh b'shvach kli. If Uman Koneh b'shvach kli, the guy has some type of ownership, and therefore when I get back from him, now I'm chayv Tevillas Keilim. Okay, now, we're not going to talk about it today, but today we're going to talk about this din of Uman Koneh b'shvach kli and how it relates to us. Next time, Rich Hashem, we're going to talk about a very practical application. It sounds very what's the case of this? We'll talk next time. We're going to find out a very practical application of this. Okay, so this question of whether Uman Koneh b'shvach kli, the Gra says to look. He says you should know it's not only in Yerdeh, it's actually also in Choshen Mishpat and in Even Ezer. He tells you two places to look to find out about this din of Uman Koneh b'shvach kli. So if you look over there, you find out that the Mechaber is consistent. Okay, the Shita of the Mechaber is consistent. Over here he said we don't say Uman Koneh b'shvach kli. In Choshen Mishpat he also says we don't say Uman Koneh b'shvach kli. In the case in Choshen Mishpat it's a case to take money away from somebody. Okay, what happened is that I gave a piece of wood to the Uman. Okay, the wood was worth $50. I gave him $50 worth of wood. He took the wood and he made a box out of it. And now the box is worth $75. Okay, so he took my $50 wood and he improved it to make it worth more. And now the box got damaged in a way that the Uman is responsible for getting damaged. So the shaila is, does he owe me $50 or does he owe me $75? Does he owe me $50 because that's what I gave him? I gave him $50, he has to give me $50 back. Or does he owe me $75 because a $75 box broke? So it depends if Uman Koneh b'shvach kli. If the Uman is kind of the extra $25 worth, he doesn't have to pay me for that. That was his. I got damaged. So the Mechaber there says we do not say Uman Koneh b'shvach kli.
And if he's only Koneh when I pay him,
it broke before he gave it to me. I gave it the wood to the Uman, and the Uman made the kli, and now it got destroyed. So does he owe me just to give me my $50 back for my wood?
And then they have to. If he pays for me, I have to pay him also.
Say it again.
I have to pay for the work.
When he gives me the $75 of the box, I'll pay him his $5 for doing the work for me. Yeah, I'll pay him the $5, but does he owe me $75 or does he owe me $50? If he just owes me for my wood because the box was his.
Also, if I doubt that went up, I'm going to have to pay.
You're not going to pay. No, you made a deal with him. He said, I'm going to give you $50 worth of wood and $5 for your efforts, and I'm going to give you the box.
Only the value of his payment?
You mean
the value of the improvement.
That's over and above the
right, that's the point. That is all his. That's out tonight that when I pay him the $5 for the work, he has to give that to me. We have a premium. Of course the improvement is worth more, or else you wouldn't pay that much for it. Or else you have to pay more than that. Okay, but that's what he has. So the din there is, we say we do not say Uman Koneh B'Shvach, even though that means he has to pay me more. Okay, that's what the Mechaber says. In Even Ezer, it's a case where a person said, a man said to a lady, with the money that you're gonna owe me for making something for you, for being Uman, I'm gonna make an Uman. For that money, I want you to be Mekudeshes to me. Okay, with that money. So the Mechaber says, Ein Mekudeshes. Uman is not Koneh B'Shvach, he has nothing to give her, and she's in Mekudeshes. He says, V'yesh Armim, that she's Mekudeshes. Which is understood that there's a chumrah of Eishes Ish. I mean, there, if we're wrong about this din, then she's an issue. We're saying Ein Mekudeshes is pretty serious. So there, l'chumrah, he says, V'yesh Armim. Not even to the first sheet, V'yesh Armim, that she's Mekudeshes. So, basically, the Mechaber is consistent. Okay? The Ramah is not so clear. Okay? The Ramah, by us said, you should be machmir that Uman Koneh B'Shvach Kli. In Even Ezer, it's not clear to me. I don't know how you read it. In Even Ezer, after the Mechaber says Ein Mekudeshes, V'yesh Armim that she's Mekudeshes, and the Ramah says, he explains, because in case it's talking about an Uman, because the Uman has this Koneh B'Shvach Kli. I'm not sure if we should read that as he's being accepting the later shita. Okay? He explains the second shita. He doesn't say which way he holds. Okay? But what we're surprised by is what's in Chosh Mishpat. Okay? And what it is like this. If you look in Chosh Mishpat, now I'm sorry about the yellow lines. You'll see where they fit, but whatever.
Now, when the Ramah said you got to table it because Uman is paying, is that with a bracha or without a bracha?
Without a bracha. It's a suffix. It's a suffix of Uman Koneh B'Shvach. Okay. So in Chosh Mishpat, in the regular Shulchan Aruch, it says like this: Uman Koneh B'Shvach Kli. You didn't see the beginning words. Okay. The Mechaber says you do not. You have to take the whole thing because Ein HaUman Koneh B'Shvach Kli. Okay, I know it looks funny here, but the Mechaber says Ein, and the Ramah says, and it says there, but Ein Even Ezer Siman Chof Ches Sif Tes Vav. Okay, that's where this child the other thing I told you. So if the Ramah over there was being machmir for Uman Koneh B'Shvach Kli, over here he's telling you Ein Even Ezer that over there we're machmir to say Uman Koneh B'Shvach Kli.
Or even Uman is a muhzak.
Over here, the Uman is not a muhzak. He's not a muhzak. He's the Uman. He has to pay more.
No, he's a muhzak on the money. You want to charge him. You want more money from the Uman.
And you still, and the Mechaber says, still we say,
right,
it's being machmir in this case. That would be consistent. If this is what the Ramah said, that would be consistent. Because in our case, he said, be machmir the Uman Koneh B'Shvach Kli. And there he's saying is, hold on to your money. Yeah, in each case, he's saying, it would be, if that's what the Ramah says, it would be right. Okay, the only problem is, the Mechaber says in every case, Ein Uman Koneh B'Shvach Kli. In all three cases. But he doesn't. So the Shach says, the person could take Kimli like the other Shita. Okay, but the Mechaber says, I'm so sure that Ein Uman Koneh B'Shvach Kli, I'm so sure that you have to make the guy pay money, even though it's to be moitzi money from the guy. Okay? The Shach says, no, you can take Kimli. Okay? But the Mechaber is very convinced about it. Okay, but that's what it says in the regular Shulchan Aruch. Okay, but if you look in the Uman Shulchan Aruch, okay, in the one that's called Tzuras Hadaf, you'll see that the Ayin Even Ezer Siman Chof Ches is in a different font. Okay, and the reason why it's in a different font, no, that's not why. The reason why it's in a different font, because all the comments that we have in squiggly letters after the Mechaber are not all written by the Ramah. So they put into a different font to tell you that comes Ayin Even Ezer is not written by the Ramah. And the Mechon Yerushalayim one is even more dramatic. Okay, they just put it on the bottom of the page. Okay, they don't even put it in the Ramah. They just put Ayin Even Ezer Siman Chof Ches. That somebody stuck in the comment there that you see Siman Chof Ches, which is appropriate because over there it talks about Uman Koneh B'Shvach Kli, but the Ramah didn't say that. Okay, it's not.
They're off in the Shach.
What did you say?
They're off in the Shach.
Maybe it is. I don't know who it's from. I don't know who it's from, but it's not. What I mean is, so it just leads me. It leads me to the question. It leads me to the question: How come in Yerdea the Ramah is saying be machmir say Uman Koneh B'Shvach Kli? You should be machmir Uman Koneh B'Shvach Kli. Maybe in Even Ezer he says it also be machmir say Uman Koneh B'Shvach Kli. But and in our day we're saying it's a derived supposed to be machmir. Over here, why isn't he arguing over here? The guy can keep his money. Over here we're being moitzi money. So if there's a tzad to say that you should be machmir say Uman Koneh B'Shvach Kli, then the guy should say yes. Don't take the money. The Ramah saying also that no, you can't take the money away from the guy because l'chormo we should say Uman Koneh B'Shvach Kli. It's my money. You prove that it's not like that. Which is not the Shach says it from the angle of Kimli. The guy can say you can't take my money. But why doesn't the Ramah say Ayin Even Ezer? Why doesn't he say something? It's funny over here. Why is Ramah not saying in this case say Uman Koneh B'Shvach Kli? Okay, so So let's move on to another case. But again, the real halacha l'maisa is going to be Mitzvah next time. Okay. So we're leading up now towards that, and that's like this. There's a tshuva in Igros Moshe, and others say the same thing. It says like this: this shayla that we have, that Uman Koneh Mishvachli, this thing that we have, what's the problem? He doesn't look happy. Okay. This thing that we say that Uman Koneh Mishvachli, that's talking about when we have, like the case of the Mechaber. I gave the guy some silver, and the Uman created something out of this thing. He was an Uman who made something out of this. But he says, if I have a factory, okay, if a Yid owns a factory, and he pays a bunch of people $8 an hour to make, okay, I'm sorry, now it's $15 an hour to make something for him, okay, he pays hourly employees to work for him. There isn't a question, everyone agrees that those workers have no rights to the kli. There's no Uman Koneh B'Shvach kli, nothing like that at all. Okay, Uman Koneh B'Shvach kli. It's in the words of actually in the Ramah in Ebenezer. Uman Koneh B'Shvach kli is when the guy says Uman who's a kavah and he takes a thing, he makes something out of it. What?
It's like
Okay, so if these guys are just paid by the hour, or they're just sitting there making the factory, we don't say Uman Koneh B'Shvach kli. Okay, so it appears. Okay, at first glance, at least it appears that there's a Chachmas Adam who argues on this. Okay, and the Aruch Shulchan and they're in struggles. What is the Chachmas Adam trying to say? Chachmas Adam says, he says that if you have, he says a Yid owns a huta. Okay,
Still a factory.
a factory. So they tell me that in he says it that way, and so did the dictionary looked and says that a huta means iron factory. Okay.
What language?
Polish. I'm sorry, it's a Polish word. Okay. No, Polish word. So yeah, no. He just says our Polish company. We have a Polish people. But it also. But you should just know that the word is also used also the way the Chachmas Adam talks about it, which is for a glass factory. Okay, it seems like it's not so stuck on being iron and steel.
Over 20 years, it changed exactly.
Yeah, and the Chachmas Adam is talking in Yiddish. You know what I'm saying? His Yiddish, whatever. So anyhow, it's used nowadays also in that way, also for glass factories. Okay, in Polish. So the Chachmas Adam says you have a Yid who owns a huta where they make glass. So the Chachmas Adam says, but the guy who working there. So the Chachmas Adam says, he says it's not so clear whether it's Chayv and Tefillah or not Chayv and Tefillah. Meaning, what the point is now that glass was now sold to Yidden. Okay, Yidden bought it from him. So the question is, does it belong to a Yid own the materials from the beginning? So maybe it shouldn't be Chayv and Tefillah. We'd say, no, maybe the guy made it, it should be Chayv and Tefillah. So he says, it's not so clear. He says, so if it's really difficult to type the glass, then you could be makel because glass is on Chayv and Rabbanan, and therefore you can be makel and not be type the glass. Which is to say, between the lines you're reading, that if it was a huta that made real iron instead of making glass, okay, if it was really for making metal keilim, then you would be Chayv and Tefillah. Okay, so the Aruch Shulchan says, what's going on here? Why Chayv and Tefillah? Obviously, it's because of Uman Koneh B'Shvach kli. That's the thought here. Excuse me, is that the workers who are there have some ownership in the keilim that they're making, because Uman Koneh B'Shvach kli, and the Ramah says, if Uman Koneh B'Shvach, if there's such a situation, then you should tell without a bracha. So they said, what's going on here? These guys just working in a factory. So what's the Aruch Shulchan says? He said, they make hundreds or thousands of keilim over there. He said, they don't have any ownership in that, which is what we see a lot of our friends saying nowadays also, is that, come on, the guys just pay by the hour. They have no Uman Koneh B'Shvach kli. Okay? So I'm going to try to give you two possible hesberim as to what what did you say? No, he doesn't talk about it. No. That I'm aware of. No, he doesn't quote it. The Igros Moshe has very little to say about it. It's a couple of lines at the end of the tshuva. Aruch Shulchan says, he says, I don't know what he's talking about. Aruch Shulchan quotes the Chachmas Adam. He says, I don't know what he's talking about. Okay, and so like this. I have two variations of how to say it. I don't think they're so different from each other. Okay, the first is like this. When nowadays, like 100 years ago, they figured out how to make glass by machine. Okay, but it didn't used to be like that. Okay, glass wasn't made by machine. Glass was made by hand. It was a big skill to make glass. So in the Chai Adam's, Chachmas Adam's huta, a guy sat down in the morning and he gave him a big pile of sand. Okay, and he came back at the end of the day, and you had your bunch of glasses that he had made for you. Okay? So Kenzain, that even though by a regular factory employee that we talk about nowadays, who's sitting there churning out widgets, by the hour, is doing that. It's not I don't mean to say whether it's a skill or not a skill, but it's the guy sitting there and just doing a repetitive pressing buttons. I'm paid by the hour, not by my skill. Then that person has no shaykhs to Koneh shachli, as opposed to a huta where you say, okay, here's a pile of sand, and here's an oven, and come back in, and I want you to make 10 glasses for me. There, the guy Taka he's doing an Uman Koneh shachli. He's doing it as a type of an umnus, where it happens to be, you pay him by the hour versus by the piece, but mine says, maybe it's possible to have an Uman Koneh shachli because that's what basically he's doing.
The first guy's not skilled.
What is it?
The first guy's not skilled.
My point is not whether he's skilled or he's not skilled, but he's being paid for his skill. That's what he's being paid for, as opposed to the guy in silverware factory, not paying for his skill. He's paying it just someone's got to.
No, but the owner is the owner of the factory is the owner of
The owner is a yid. The owner is a yid, and it's the guy who's doing the work.
How do you know the trains?
Right. But it's not a.
It's not a skill.
It's not essentially.
It's just dependent if he's a compliment or paid by the time. It's just
How do you know
you're saying it makes a little better, but still, that should be the deciding factor.
Okay, so in my first variation, I didn't think Mendel. My second variation that is, you're going to hear me in a second, is that it could be that the Chai Adam's, the Chachmas Adam's Huta, wasn't really what we think of as a factory, but rather, if I could use the word, it's more like a market. Which is to say, I have a factory. You want glass made? You come to my guy. I have 10 guys here making glass. You walk in and you say, I want a glass that's this big and this like this. Here's a guy who will do it for you. And I'm getting some kind of a cut on this. But I give the guy equipment. I give the guy ingredients. I give the stuff. And a place where people come to get their glass made. Again, it's made by hand. So you come in and get your glass made. But essentially, you're hiring this guy, and I'm just doing the setup. I have all the pieces in place. I have the market. Everyone who knows this is going to come to buy your glass. But the guy is really Uman, which is as if he's to say he's being paid. He's being what?
Like a barbershop.
Like a barbershop?
Each guy rents his own chair.
Okay, something like that.
Who's responsible for it? If anything is,
So it's in that case, the guy, the person who's making the stuff is really being paid per piece. You're basically coming in and paying him. Here's $1 to make me the following glass. It happens to me it's in the setup of a factory. I mean, it's in a big building with a lot of people doing the same thing, but it's not a mass-produced factory. This is not a Henry Ford here. Okay, it's a different kind of a thing. Okay, so my point is that if the Chacham means one of those things, Kenzain, that's not what everyone's arguing on. Okay, the cases that everyone argues is if I have a factory that churns out plates, or churns out glass things, and there's a guy pushing buttons or watching the factory, this and that guy is not Uman Koneh shachli. It can say that they would agree to the Chacham in the right case that we would say Uman Koneh shachli even in a factory type setting. We'll hear more about it next time. Why I'm telling you this. Okay, I have to just throw in one last thing, which is a monkey mentioned to this, which is the Chazon Ish says. Chazon Ish doesn't say so much about Tevillas Keilim. The Chazon Ish does say one thing. He says more, but one thing that I'm aware of. He says like this. He says the whole din of Uman Koneh shachli is not true if the civil law, the law of the land is the Uman has no Koneh shachli. If the rule is that the Uman has no ownership in the Kli, then we don't say Uman Koneh shachli. That's partial. Everyone will agree there's no Uman Koneh shachli. If there's a standing law that says that the Uman doesn't have it. Now, I don't know how that fits. I mean, but we know, Rabbi Reese is not here. He asked about the Chosh Mishpat side of that. To me, that's like a surprise. Right? That we would say Uman Koneh shachli depends on what the civil law is. But he says if the civil law is that the Uman has no ownership in what he's working at, he's just looked at, I guess, like as an hourly employee, then then what?
If the woman is dead,
okay, maybe it's a diet of maybe that's what it means. Maybe something like that.
Let's say the thing is that Uman Koneh shachli is out there halacha. You tell your woman, I'm making a deal with you. I don't want you to be Koneh shachli, and that works. So then,
right, okay, so maybe that's what it is. So maybe that's what's going on over here. If that's what's going on here.
who says that?
Chazon Ish says it. So if that's true, then the din of Uman Koneh shachli is not going to be so gay to us. Okay, this whole possibility, because what's going to be this? Well, I mean, I'm assuming that in law where we are. That's the way it is. The Uman doesn't have any rights to the Kli. It doesn't say, there's no concept in American or Chinese or European law that says is.
It's a lien. There's a workman's lien.
Which means?
The guy that's working in electric work in your house, he might have a lien on your.
a lien to say is that I did the work. I have a lien on it until you pay me.
So you know,
It depends. It might not be a Kenyan.
It may be the same as Uman Koneh B'Shachli. In Uman Koneh B'Shachli, he doesn't have a right to walk away with it. He only has a right to hold it till you pay him. Once you pay him, he doesn't have a right. He's forced to sell it to you at the price that you made up with him beforehand. Right? That's the deal. So okay, so I'll have to look at that.
It's a dinner of mashkin. I have the cleaner. You want my money? Pay me the money from ever. I'll give it back to you.
But that's what Uman Koneh B'Shachli is also. Uman Koneh B'Shachli is also is that I have the.
It's a little different.
yeah, it's a little different. I don't know what's a mashkin.
In Uman, let's say
Look at Shakli, he actually owns it.
Let's say the Uman decides that he doesn't want to give it to you. You think he has the right to do that? No, of course not. There's a deal before that if you pay him for his work, you pay him for the work.
Yeah, but he has to buy it back from you.
But
Now he's saying maybe just a mashkin, he has the right to hold on to it.
maybe Uman Koneh B'Shachli is along those lines also. Is that I have the rights to it until you pay me.
More of a king.
Okay, but so I'll have to look into that before because
Tomorrow's when you make
it's gonna be-
you made it. And,
it's going to be in the game for next time. So I have to find out about that. It'll be in the game for next time.
yeah, sure.